Hello and welcome to HW News. This is Miyati. So the much awaited targeted long-term repo operations 2.0 was announced by RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das today. Well, he began his address by citing Mahatma Gandhi's couplets, "In the midst of death, life persists." He thanked all the frontline workers, the medical professionals and doctors and nurses. Then talking about the GDP growth of India, he said that the IMF International Monetary Fund has predicted 1.9% of GDP growth for India in the current financial year. He said that this is the best prediction for among the G20 countries. So India has had the best prediction for GDP growth among the G20 countries. However, the same agency has also said that the global economy will suffer a damage to the tune of $9 trillion due to the coronavirus pandemic and the resultant lockdown. However, the agency has predicted 7.4% of the GDP growth for India's economy in the next financial year after the coronavirus pandemic is over. However, further talking about the reverse repo rate, he said that RBI has decided to cut the reverse repo rate by 25 basis points, which will take it to 3.75%, which is down from the 4% that has been earlier. Next up, he also talked about refinancing the institutions. He said that 50,000 crore rupees will be dedicated to refinance institution, out of it 25,000 crores will be given to the NABARD, 15,000 crores will be given to SIDBI and 10,000 crores will be given to National Housing Board. Further, to keep the liquidity in the system, to boost the liquidity in the system, the RBI has pledged to invest 50,000 crore rupees through the long-term repo operations. It has also said that IMD predicted a good rain, a good monsoon this year, and the Kharif crop has already been better than what it was last year. So on agriculture front also, India is doing better. However, he also talked about the banking operations. He said that there will be no shortage of cash in the lockdown period as well. He said that during the lockdown period so far, there was not even one time when the internet banking was down. It has been operating very smoothly and ATMs are functioning up to 91% of their capacity. So these are some of the highlights of his press conference. However, let us see in detail what RBI Governor Shaktikanta Das announced today.
On April 14, the IMF released its global growth projections, revealing that in 2020, global economy is expected to plunge into the worst recession since the Great Depression, far worse than what had happened during the global financial crisis. The IMF's economic counselor has named it the Great Lockdown, estimating the cumulative loss to global GDP over 2020 and 21 at around $9 trillion US dollars, which is greater than the economies of Japan and Germany combined. Within this downturn, the projections are replete with even sharper declines in output in various countries. India is among the handful of countries that is projected to cling on somewhat tenuously to positive growth at 1.9%. In fact, this is the highest growth rate among the G20 economies as estimated by the IMF. The World Trade Organization sees world merchandise trade contracting by as much as 13 to 32%. I repeat, 13 to 32% in 2020. Global financial markets remain volatile and emerging market economies are grappling with capital flow and volatile exchange rates. Crude oil prices remain in a state of flux despite the agreement on production cuts by OPEC plus countries. For 2021, the IMF projects sizable V-shaped recoveries, close to 9 percentage points for the global GDP. India is expected to post a sharp turnaround and resume its pre-COVID, pre-slowdown trajectory by growing at 7.4% in 2021-22. In my statement of March 27, I had referred to continuing resilience of agriculture and allied activities on the back of all-time highs in production of food grains and horticulture, with huge buffer stocks of rice and wheat far in excess of the buffer norms. By April 10, pre-monsoon Kharif sowing had begun strongly, with acres of paddy, which as you know is the principal Kharif crop, up by 37% in comparison with the last season, that is in comparison with the Kharif of 2019. States such as West Bengal, Telangana, Odisha, Assam, Karnataka and Chhattisgarh are leading in sowing activity despite the lockdown. On April 15, the India Meteorological Department IMD forecast a normal southwest monsoon for 2020 season, with rainfall expected to be 100% of the long period average. These are early developments and they bode well for our rural demand, supported as they are by accelerating fertilizer production, which was noticed up to February 2020. On April 9, the Index of Industrial Production for February was released, showing that industrial output accelerated to its highest rate in 7 months. The impact of COVID-19 is not yet captured in these prints. So therefore, there is no reason to get misled by the IIP data which was released up to February, because the impact of COVID-19 comes thereafter. More tellingly, however, the revival in electricity generation, a coincident indicator of demand that had commenced from January 2020, has been halted by a sharp fall in daily demand in the range of 25 to 30% after the lockdown announcement on March 25th. Automobile production and sales, port freight traffic declined sharply in March, as recently released data indicates. The Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, that is PMI, for March 2020, which was released on April 2, was the lowest in last 4 months. Notably, suppliers' delivery time lengthened for the first time in 5 months, indicating supply disruptions. The April 6 release showed that services PMI declined into contraction in March 2020, pulled down by a sharp downturn in export business, new domestic orders and employment. In the external sector, the contraction in exports in March 2020 at minus 34.6% has turned out to be much more severe than during the global financial crisis. However, amidst all this, the level of foreign exchange reserves which we have continue to be robust at US dollar 476.5 billion on April 10th, equivalent to 11.8 months of imports. There was no downtime of internet or mobile banking. On an average, ATM operations stood at 91% of the full capacity. The average availability of business correspondents is over 80%. Regional offices of RBI have supplied fresh currency of rupees 1,20,000 crores from March 1 till April 14th to currency chests across the country to meet increased demand for currency in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. Banks have indeed risen to the occasion by refilling the ATMs regularly despite several logistical challenges. In my statement of March 27, I had indicated that together with the measures announced on March 27, the RBI's liquidity injection was about 3.2% of GDP since February 2020 MPC meeting. And as you would recall, the February 26, the February MPC meeting, the announcements were made, if I recall correctly, on 6th of February. So from 6th February 2020 till March 27th, including the announcement made on March 27th, RBI had injected liquidity of an amount equivalent to 3.2% of our GDP. As announced on March 27, the RBI undertook 3 auctions of targeted term repo operations, that is TLTRO, injecting cumulatively rupees 75,041 crore to ease liquidity constraints in the banking system and distress financial markets. Another TLTRO auction of rupees 25,000 crore is being conducted today. In response to these auctions, financial conditions, now this is very important, in response to these conditions, financial conditions have eased. I correct myself, in response to these auctions, financial conditions have eased considerably as reflected in the spreads on money and bond market instruments. Moreover, activity in the corporate bond market has picked up appreciably, with several corporates making new issuances. Accordingly, it has been decided to conduct targeted long-term repo operations TLTRO 2.0 for an aggregate amount of rupees 50,000 crore to begin with. Please mark my words, rupees 50,000 crore to begin with, in tranches of appropriate sizes. Based on our assessment of the evolving situation and based on the pattern of utilization of this 50,000 crore by the market and in the market, it is always open for RBI to step up this amount beyond 50,000 crores as per requirement or as may be necessary, to see that various segments of the market, various segments of the MFIs, the NBFCs and other institutions, in terms of liquidity, they remain well lubricated. These All India financial institutions normally raise resources from the market through specified instruments which are allowed by the Reserve Bank of India, in addition to, of course, relying on their own resources. In view of the tightening of financial conditions in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic, these institutions are today facing difficulties in raising resources from the market. Accordingly, it has been decided to provide special refinance facilities for a total amount of rupees 50,000 crores to NABARD, SIDBI and NHB to enable them to meet sectoral credit needs. This will comprise of rupees 25,000 crore to NABARD for refinancing regional rural banks, that is RRBs, and cooperative banks and microfinancial institutions. Rupees 15,000 crore will flow to SIDBI for on-lending and refinancing, and as you know, SIDBI will be lending this money to, by way of providing refinance to scheduled commercial banks as well as to other financial entities, NBFCs, MFIs, etc., who sanction loans to the MSME segment of the economy. And NHB will be allotted rupees 10,000 crore for supporting housing finance companies, HFCs. Now, in order to encourage the banks to deploy these surplus funds in investments and loans in productive sectors of the economy, it has been decided to reduce the fixed rate reverse repo rate under the liquidity adjustment facility by 25 basis points from 4% to 3.75% with immediate effect. So I repeat, the reverse repo rate is being reduced by 25 basis points from 4% to 3.75%. The policy repo rate, however, remains unchanged at 4.4% because that is a matter which is decided by the MPC, and also the marginal standing facility rate and bank rate, they also remain unchanged at 4.65%. It has now been decided to increase the WMA limit of states by 60%, by 60% over and above the level as on March 31st, 2020, to provide greater comfort to the states for undertaking COVID containment and mitigation efforts, and also to plan their market borrowing programs better. This, we expect, will help the states not to bunch up their borrowing program in the early part of the year, but to space it appropriately as per their requirement. Therefore, it has been decided that in respect of all accounts for which lending institutions decide to grant moratorium or deferment and which were standard as on 1st March 2020, the 90-day NPA norm shall exclude the moratorium period. The next announcement relates to distribution of dividend. It is imperative that banks conserve capital to retain their capacity to support the economy and absorb losses in an environment of heightened uncertainty. It has therefore been decided that in view of the COVID-19 related economic shock, scheduled commercial banks and cooperative banks shall not make any further dividend payouts from profits pertaining to the financial year ended 31st March 2020 until further instructions. The next announcement relates to NBFC loans to commercial real estate projects. In terms of extant guidelines for banks, the date for commencement of commercial operations, DCCO, in respect of loans to commercial real estate projects delayed for reasons beyond the control of promoters can be extended by additional 1 year over and above the 1 year extension permitted in the normal course without treating the same as restructuring. And restructuring, as you know, would obviously have implications for asset classification. It has now been decided to extend a similar treatment to loans given by NBFCs to commercial real estate. This will provide relief to NBFCs as well as to the real estate sector.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.